Hello everybody, ciao a tutti and welcome to Art with Ms.B. Today I'm going to teach you how to draw a beautiful simple still life following a different type of composition rule compared to the last practice that was about the rule of third. This time we're going to use the composition rule of the L, which is a beautiful, nice asymmetric way to create a balanced, harmonic and interesting composition. This rule of composition, they don't have to be followed all the time, but definitely mostly when you are a beginner and you want to really learn all the techniques and all the rules in case you want to break them, right? And you want to personalize them. I feel that these exercises are perfect for you. You don't need to be an advanced artist, any level, any background. It's fine because the steps are simple. You just follow me. Few advices for this practice. You need just a white piece of paper, drawing paper. I'm using watercolor paper, which is a little thicker and has some texture, because at the end, after we do the drawing and we do all the shading, so we add the value, I like to brush some watercolors. You can do the same. You can leave it in black and white, like the pure mere exercise of drawing, or you can color with coloring pencil. In that case, you're gonna probably need a little extra time because coloring with pencil takes longer. And remember to also respect the value that you set with the pencil. So always alternate shadow and light. What else? I'm gonna use a pencil. My graphite inside is a 2B, so it's pretty soft. If you have a soft pencil such as B or 2B, use it because it's easy to set the value and to shade without adding too much pressure, because the softer is the graphite inside, the darker is the mark that the pencil leaves on the paper. But if you have an HB or a regular drawing pencil, please follow along. Just don't press hard on the paper, and when you want to add the value, so when you want to dark up the area, you will just go over several times. I will also talk about different type of strokes that we can use with the pencil, so it's a simple practice but carries a lot of amazing content. What else can I say? Nothing. I feel that you will have everything in the description box. Just prep yourself with pencil and paper, and then let's start this amazing and very relaxing exercise. Remember subscribing to my channel if you like what I do and what I propose you. Let me know in the comment how it goes, and let's help this page to get this YouTube channel to get better and bigger and full of artists like you. Ciao! Okay guys, this is my paper. I'm using, as I told you, watercolor because I want to brush with some watercolor at the end. This time I am not keeping my paper in landscape directions, but I'm switching to a portrait direction because it fits better the composition that we are about to do it. So for our still life, we're gonna trace a very light lines that is gonna set our table. So remember, when we do the line of the horizon in our landscape, this is kind of the line of the horizon in our still life. Do it light, so then we will be able to erase the part that we don't need anymore. Now, as we were talking about, the L composition means that the objects are going to be placed on a side that could either be the left or either be the right. So for example, I'm going to trace a very simple vase, 2 parallel lines, nice and light. And remember, we don't cut it straight, but we cut it like with a nice, gently curved line, right? To create that idea of three-dimensionality. Now we're gonna raise the part of this horizon line, the table, that we don't need anymore because we don't wanna see it. But maybe if you want, you can close the lid of the vase, or you can leave it as it is, depending if you want it transparent or not. We're gonna do the same on the top. Okay, and now we're gonna place our flower. First, I like to place the center of the flower, so I'm gonna have one over here, and we're doing this nice circle because we're gonna do some daisy. So we wanna make sure that the center is puffy and circular. Definitely one over here. I would say one probably over here. I will put one here in the center, not super in the center because I don't want them to look too perfect, and one over here. Okay, now we're gonna add the petals as usual. Remember that they are petals, they don't have to be perfect, they don't have to look all exactly the same. The secret is that if you go light, you will be able to do adjustment and modification. This one maybe we can create more like in the front, so sort of a frontal view of this nice daisy. We can tilt a little bit the petals. Then we're gonna do another one over here. Remember that the focus of this exercise is not to draw the perfect still life, but is focus on the use of space and the rule of composition that follow the L shape, which creates a nice interest in our still life. So if you had to do a still life because you need to do it for school or you wanted to do it or whatever, you know that you can place your composition centrally and have more of a triangular type of composition or more traditional, but you can also create interest in this asymmetric use of space that make your drawing be a little more interesting. Now we're gonna add the stems. The stems, they will go all the way down. Take your time. Create some overlapping. Another stem will be behind, and probably let's have it overlap this way. One last over here. We're gonna make it overlap it a little bit over here. Now maybe here we can add the beautiful leaves. One more over here going down. And with the eraser, you're gonna erase the part of the base that you don't need anymore. Probably we'll do another one over here so we can kind of play with some watercolor at the end and with some shading and value. And this is our simple vase. So now let's pretend that, for example, the light come in this direction. So this side is gonna be slightly lighter while this side is gonna be slightly darker. And also we're gonna have a shadow, right? A cast of shadow of flowers. Here also you will have some shadow coming from this one, and probably the shadow will project something like that, okay? So you can trace the part that you need to do darker than the rest. Here, if you don't want to leave it empty, remember when we discussed the rule of third, when we divide our space. So let's pretend that you have one line over here, one line over here, one line over here, and we got it. And then you will have an intersection over here. You can put a tiny fly, for example, or a tiny bee or something symbolic, just to create a sort of like a visual device. Doesn't have to be anything fancy or complicated, something nice and cute. If you want to add details on the table, you can do so as well. Now, do some shading. So we talk about value all the time. Value is an important element, mostly, you know, in painting, drawing, like it's an element of art. So, but in drawing, it's really significant because if you leave it as it is, it's very pretty, but it's very flat. That doesn't mean that sometimes you don't want it flat. For example, sometimes I use alcohol markers and I love my composition to be kind of flat but very, very colorful, and then I would do outline. But in this case, when we are learning how to draw, we want to make sure a little more realistic, and we want to give our drawing some three-dimensionality, some interest, some dynamics and movement. We really need to make sure that we include the value. So the alternation of light and shadow in our picture that makes everything really look more alive, right? overall the center of the flower are going to be pretty dark. And then we started to do some coloring on the petals, some coloring with pencil, some value. Remember that the light comes from this side, so this petal will be very light. We're gonna just add a couple of, lines for texture. This one is gonna start to be just slightly darker on this side, right? This one, we add the lines, and then we're gonna add some nice shading with the pencil. You don't need to overdo it overall because we are, the flowers are pretty light themselves. And so, and then definitely the bottom of this petal will be darker compared to the top. You can go over to intensify the value. Don't be afraid. Remember that we want to make sure that we represent the whole scale from white all the way to almost black. Now we do the same with this one. This one will be darker overall than this one because it is covered by this flower, pretending that the light arrived over here. So we're gonna do first some nice texture on each petal, and then we start with our shading. I am using a pretty soft graphite. It's like a 2B, and these allow me to really have a pretty dark mark on the paper without pushing too much. If you're using an HB, so harder pencil, you probably have to do some more work. Remember that it's more than a pressure. You don't have to apply so much pressure, but more than a pressure will be just coloring over and over an area instead of versus another. I'm gonna start to intensify the darkness of these petals because they are farther apart from the light. One side, lighter the other. I'm gonna turn around the paper, otherwise because I'm left-handed, I will go over the design and I will mess it up, as sometimes it happens. I'm going to dark up a little bit more the center compared to the petal because I want it to be, of course, the darkest point. And as you notice, I work from the center going out. Now I'm going to do these flowers. So this one is going to be overall extremely light. It's very high, so it's the flower that from this side it gets most of the sun, most of the light. So we're going to add definitely over here. Here, this side is going to be darker. This petal is going to be the darkest one, so I'm gonna color it gently all of it, but mostly here. I'm gonna go over the center exactly as I did for the other one, leave it the top a little bit lighter, and then I'm gonna light up my shading over here. Now we're gonna do this flower. I'm gonna turn the paper for the same reason. This one is gonna be overall pretty dark. Definitely darker than this one because this flower cover it from the and shelter it from the light, and most of all because it's also facing the other side when the light doesn't arrive. So probably I'm going to already redark the center, and then I started to do some nice shading on the petals. Remember that the focus of this practice is the use of space, use of different composition rules that can really support and enhance your beautiful composition, such as still life, landscapes, and they can be applied even in portraits, although portraits it's a little different because usually you have the face and it gets emphasized as the main most important images, of course, of your artwork. But I feel that through these exercises, because we always shade them together, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to really practice and practice and practice the element of value as we are doing right now, and really truly look at the difference between the beginning of this design where everything was flat and how much the value add to this design. dark it up again, and then let's start with some nice shading on the petal. If you need to take a longer time, please take it the longer time. Pause the video, do you. This side is gonna be way darker, this side is gonna be way darker, and this petal overall is gonna be pretty dark. This one also, we're gonna dark it up. Okay, now we're going to kind of make the stems, adding just a little bit, like I will brush them with watercolor because I love to add a gentle touch of color, but we're going to set this beautiful now on to the leaf. First leaf, we're going to make sure that some value here. Of course, this side will be lighter because it's more exposed to the light. This side will be darker because it's less exposed to the light. This one will be pretty dark over here because it's kind of covered, right? Sheltered. Then we're gonna leave it pretty light. We're gonna do some nice shading, and as you can see, I'm literally scribbling, basically doing these random strokes. This one will be definitely the darkest of the leaves, nice and dark. But we don't want to color it completely. We can do some veins that will be barely visible, but it's okay. And now let's close the vase behind our flowers, right? Pretend that this is all the water. And over here, we need to shade the vase as well, right? So this side is going to be way darker. Even if you want to leave some transparency to the vase, we're gonna use this cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is when you go like in a diagonal in a direction and then in a diagonal in another direction. It's one of the type of strokes that you can use to add value, and so to shade, that is traditional shading. You have scribble, so I did some traditional shading over here. We did some scribbling. Now we're doing some cross-hatching. So in this practice, actually, we are reviewing so many important techniques that you can use to blend and shade and add value. At the same time, we are going over the composition rules, right? And here, if you want, you can use the same type of hatching, like, these just strokes, and then we can go over with diagonal strokes in the opposite direction, or you can leave it like that. And I feel that, look, with a simple practice, as I was saying, we got to review the rule of composition using an L-shaped composition, which is a beautiful way to create balance and harmony in an artwork without being too explicit, too symmetric, right? Now we are doing, we are working on value, understanding the power and the importance of this element of art, and how we can support this element on our composition by shading and making sure that we represent all the scale of shadow and light from white all the way to almost black or black. We are also reviewing different type of strokes, which are like the technique that we can use to embrace the element of value. We're gonna reinforce and go over. I'm not pressuring hard on the paper. I'm gentle and delicate. I'm just going over. And I always suggest you to do so, because there is always an opportunity for you to do more, but it's way more difficult to when you overdo it and then you need to go back. So if you don't overdo it and you have the patience to do it little by little, this side of the table also, we're gonna make sure that from the line it's gonna be just slightly darker, and this one instead overall is gonna be very, very light. Then I'm going to go over a little bit more to my little B. Because it is so far away, I didn't do it even realistically. Like, you know, I just want it to be something, not to leave this space empty. Now you can leave your project as it is, and it's a beautiful, well done black and white drawing. You can brush some watercolor as I would do, because I just love to do so. Or you can keep the coloring going with your coloring pencil. And it will be beautiful. It will just take a little longer. But you know, if you have time, why not? We should always dedicate time and care and attention to what is important to us. Now I'm going to barely touch with my brush, just to give a little tiny bit of color to this vase. The color will show darker when I put value, like a darker shade underneath, right? And it will show lighter when where I didn't. Now let's find a nice, maybe yellow orangey for our flower. See, nice. I just, as you see, barely touch it. It's beautiful because you see, you can still see the pencil underneath and the work that we did with value. So it's not like a covering up or overpowering the work with pencil, which is exactly what I love. We go petal by petal. Don't worry if you go a little bit outside. The goal of this watercolor brushing is not to have like the neatest of the coloring, but just to add some interest to this beautiful drawing, to add some vibes and some energy through color. The trick is just like to understand the amount of water that you want. In this case, I want to control it a little bit because I don't want it to bleed too much. So make sure that your brush is not too wet, too watery. Very nice. Now I'm gonna add a very dark brown with the brush almost dry. Don't worry about it, it will dry and it will light up a little bit. Now let's find a nice green. And very carefully go over your stems. Once again, I say, if you go a little bit outside, it's actually even better. We want it to look nice and natural, casual. Now we go on to the leaves. We start from this one and we go over we let the green become lighter by not picking any more color. We're gonna pick a little bit more just to get this darker, this side of the leaf, and then you're gonna let it light it up without picking any more color for this side. There you go. Some reflection of the green. You can do some projection of the color. And now if you want, you can switch to a bigger brush so we can wash a little bit of color over here. Probably I would go with some nice pink just to contrast the green and to have a nice kind of, you know, sort of a complementary colors that can complement each other by the contrast. Very watery in this case, so truly I am truly like using more water than watercolor. Of course, this side will be a little darker and more colorful than the other. We go between the flower as well. And then we just dip some water, the brush in the water. So we still have the pink, but it's getting extremely, extremely light because as we say, the light was coming from this side. So this side is gonna be overall way dark, way lighter than this one. In fact, we are going to go over and make it just slightly darker over here and maybe back between the flower. The paper is bent in a little bit because of the watercolor, but then don't worry because it's gonna flat back down. Now we're gonna find the color for this one. So I got green and pink, sort of a complementary. Let's see, what can we find? I would like something nice and neutral, but also probably we'll go with a goldish to kind of connect with the yellow, create this nice connection with the yellow of the daisies, the flowers. So first I'm gonna do this side. Oopsie. And then just a little bit more, and I will keep expanding until it gets very, very light. And maybe just slightly darker. I will go over just a little bit more over here to make sure that there is a nice difference. And this is our beautiful drawing, following the rule of composition of an L, working on value, so shadow and light, working on different type of strokes, and finish it with a brush of watercolor if you wish to do so. I hope you enjoy this practice, and just subscribe and keep practicing with me for more. Ciao!